Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is another 2021 list. There's 5 of these. The best 15 games of 2021, 15 2021 titles I missed, 15 2021 titles that have faded on me to some degree, that's this list over here, 15 2021 hidden gems, and 15 semi-disappointments of 2021. I'll have links to those. They're going up in a variety of orders and things, so I have no clue where this particular one lies, and if you're wondering, why 2021? Isn't it 2023? Well, yes, but that gives us a full year to look back on 2021, a full year to catch up, to play them more, to see exactly where things land, and hence the list here, including this particular list as to why they faded. And with that, we'll go ahead and start this off. Timestamps to everything down below. You can jump to any relevant section, but starting off the bat with Adventure Tactics. Adventure Tactics is one that I still own this one. In fact, most of the games on this list I still own. Maybe not most, maybe about half the games on this list I still own. But Adventure Tactics gives you a dungeon crawling experience with a leveling up system that is an absolute delight to go through. The only aspect of this that really faded for me is the fact that I played it a bit with my kids when it first came out. I went through a whole bunch of scenarios with my kids, and then we played it, and then we stopped. We just kind of stopped because it was a bit harder than I would have liked to actually get them up and running with the game. You see, the game is it's a dungeon crawling game. You're going to have a bunch of characters. You're going to be trying to level up as you go through it. You're going to be choosing different classes in the game, and after each mission, you're going to be leveling up and selecting the class upgrade that you have that's going to give you the next degree of whatever you are. And as you build up these class upgrades, you'll eventually unlock new roles, new combinations of you have this and this and this, and now you unlock these new skills. The leveling up system was an absolute ton of fun. The dungeon crawling system was a little on the lighter side, and as a result of the combination of the dungeon crawling being a little on the lighter side and the fact that playing a campaign game with my kids is a little harder, it's one that kind of got relegated to being put off to the side. In fact, I actually was almost going to get rid of it, but then my daughter asked to play it with me, just me and her, and not the rest of the kids, and so that might happen at some point. But that's number 15 over here, Adventure Tactics. Number 14 is After the Empire. Again, still own it, still really enjoy this one. After the Empire, the main problem I have with it, and my rating on this has stayed the same. Some of these, many of these I would say, the rating doesn't necessarily change, rather just the practical reality of playing them often is more of a question or concern. And in After the Empire in particular, this is one which is you're going to have a horde of castles. You're going to have basically a castle you're trying to defend over here. You're going to be building up this castle. You're going to be stocking it up with more people, more goods, more whatever, trying to improve those walls into stone walls as the game progresses. And the general idea of the game is you're trying to survive hordes after hordes, onslaughts after onslaughts of enemies attacking your gates. All the enemies attacking different players' castles, because everyone's going to have their own castle, and you're going to have these cards coming in from different angles with more and more units. And you're trying to stock up by going through worker placement sequences followed by the siege. Worker placement, then siege, worker placement, then siege. Every time I play the game, I have an absolute blast. But for me, it is one that, when I'm not playing the game, I have a slightly harder time mentally being like, yep, and it's time to play this game. It's always a little harder for me to jump in and to reinvest myself, but when I do, I always have a good time. Still in my collection. It's one of those games that I look at and wonder if one day it goes away, but for right now, it's still good enough that it's totally safe. At number 13, we have another one that's in my collection. This one actually did shift down a rating mark for me. This is Ankh. Ankh went from a 4.5 to a 4 for me, and that's just due to repeated plays and just feeling a little less charmed every time I play it. I very much enjoy Ankh, and I'm still hoping the Pharaoh's expansion adds a little to the experience for me. But Ankh from Command Games, part of the Rising Sun Blood Rage trilogy. This one, I mean, the miniatures over here are absolutely amazing. The board presence is absolutely amazing. The general game is it's a very solid game as far as things go, but ultimately, when I compare it to games like Blood Rage, I'd rather play Blood Rage, and that's part of the problem here. A 4 is a good rating for a game. A 4 to 5 is a great rating for a game. But a 4 to 5 for me compared to, when you're comparing it to the other games, when you're comparing it to other games in the area control genre, a 4 to 5 almost doesn't get played for me, which puts Ankh in this weird danger zone because of how much I like games like Rurik, Cyclades, Kemet, Inish, Blood Rage, and just Ankh is very, very good. For now, it sticks around, at least until I play the Pharaoh's expansion at the very least. I still enjoy it every time I play it. It's an excellent game. It just feels a little bit more clinical and a little less bloodbath and area control. At number 11, I guess, 15, 14, 13, 12. At number 12, I can't count. At number 12, we have the first game that has left my collection. I think most of these actually still own, like maybe 5 or 6 are gone. But at number 12, we have the first one that's left my collection, which is Bullet. Bullet from Level 99 Games is a real-time, fast-paced bullet shooter. You're going to have these bullets that are coming in at you in waves, coming into your player board as you try to do the best possible to kind of repel them as much as you possibly can using your unique character and the actions they have. Every single round, you're going to be knocking those bullets out into your opponents, which means as things things come in, you're shoving it to your opponents, and then more and more things are entering the game, which means there is eventually an overflow of just things heading your way. The question is how much and how well can you repel those into your opponents, and how well can they do the same in the game. This is one that did unfortunately leave, and it's just one of those ones that was a little harder to table. I find real-time games often have a harder time in my collection. There's also the excellent solo mode, and I found myself wanting to play Under Falling Skies instead. It's an excellent game. My rating did not change in this one, but my desire to pull it out, practically speaking, in comparison with many of the other games in my collection, did drop a bit. Even though I appreciate very much what I was doing, it's just the real-time element, I had to be like mentally prepped for it, and I just found I was less mentally prepped for it on a regular, ongoing basis. Fantastic game, though, from Level 99 Games. That's my number 11. At my number 10 spot, we have Chronicles of Drunagor. And this one, it's hard to know if it really faded, or if it's more that I'm just waiting for the new system, the new content to come out for Apocalypse. You see, Chronicles of Drunagor is a dungeon crawling experience. A dungeon crawling experience where you're going to be taking on giant miniatures in a 3D dungeon where you're going to have these fantastic bosses, fantastic miniatures, this door system in play, as players try to figure out how to move from room to the next, to manage their action cubes, making sure that they're actually being pulled back properly and being utilized correctly as you use each combination of actions and level up your gear across 18 different missions in the core game or something like that, if I recall correctly. A very excellent system. One that once I tried Apocalypse, their expansion, they had a better story and better branching aspect behind it, and to that end I kind of sat there and said, you know what, I'm going to leave it on my shelf and I'll deal with it more when Apocalypse comes out. But also leaving it on my shelf has had me mentally cooling on it, and I don't know if that's just because I haven't played it, or if it's because maybe, I don't know, we'll see ultimately. For me, this is one I haven't pulled out. I have not played this since covering the Apocalypse campaign, and I am looking forward to diving back into it again, but one of the big issues with it, the reason I gave it 4 to 5 at the time, and my main reason for that rating is because the gameplay I liked more than that. But the rating was because of the fact that it was a lot to table. There's a lot of stuff on the table, a lot to manage. It's one of those games that kind of has to be set up, or it feels like a lot going on. Overall, Chronicles of Drunagor, fantastic game. That's my number 10 over here. Now, my number 9 is going to be Cubitos. Cubitos from AEG. This is the one that I played it initially when it came out. I really enjoyed it, and it completely overtook the Quacks of Quedlinburg for me. It also hasn't been played in a while, and I don't know if that's me or my game group. And I say my game group because this is one where if I'm playing it with with Rena, with Ricky, with my wife and daughter, if I'm playing with them, I find that they often prefer Quacks of Quedlinburg as far as game states go. They prefer the racing, the bag pulling of Quacks of Quedlinburg as opposed to the race that Cubitos gives you. And when playing with my game group, they enjoy it, but it does fall a little bit on the lighter side compared to the type of games that I typically play with my game group, and so to that end it gets played less there. And so I don't know whether it's more incidental as far as why it hasn't gotten played in a while, but it hasn't gotten played in a while, and it's one of those games that I look at, and when I first played it, I was like, I want expansion content for this game, like ASAP, I want more everything. And now I'm kind of like, do I need expansion content? Do I even need the base game as is? I think it's more incidentally just the fact that it's not getting played, just situationally speaking, but ultimately, situationally or not, Cubitos has faded or dropped for me. At number 8, we have one that is possibly the highest drop on this list from how much I liked it to where it is now, although it's worth noting this list is not actually ranked in any particular order past alphabetical. It's a little harder to kind of gauge, liking a game more, disliking a game more, I can gauge that. How far a drop is, it was a little more ambient, so I just gave this alphabetically. But this one, my number 8 over here, Destinies, arguably is the game that has dropped the most from where I initially held it to where it is now. Now, make no mistake, drop the most does not mean that I don't like it. I like it very much, and I still very much enjoy it. I actually played this one, I still own this one. I still own Cubitos, I still own Chronicles, by the way. So far, Bullet's the only one that's gone. But Destinies is one that not only do I still own, I played it like, I don't know, a month and a half ago or whatnot. I dove back into it, and it both reminded me of all the things I like about it, but also reminded me of the aspects of Destinies that have dropped for me, and it's more about a comparison to other games. You see, Destinies is a storytelling game that's an app-driven game as you wander around the board, as you wander around the map, trying to go to location, interact with the various characters in different ways, as you try to figure out what your particular pathway is in the story, and how you try to achieve your goals faster than others. Solo play offhand, never particularly appreciated or enjoyed. I always thought the solo play kind of felt just way too strict and didn't feel like an actual exploration. It felt like a timer as opposed to an exploration, which I didn't love that feeling. Versus playing against other players felt like a race, and it felt like you're trying to constantly get there first, and I really enjoyed that. For me, the main reason it's dropped is because since then I've played other games, particularly role-player adventures, although some others as well, that kind of give me the same feelings as Destinies, but without the app. And as much as I'm okay with the app in Destinies, the keyword is I'm okay with the app in Destinies. I do not love the app. I've never loved apps. Usually at best, I'm okay with them. Unless they're just providing narrative, that's a different story. If they're just there for like the narrative, hit the button like a foreteller situation, that's a different story. But if they're managing the game, I prefer a physical management of the game. And so Destinies has kind of taken a hit because other games have given me the highs of the experience without the app for me. Again, still a great game, still enjoy it, still own it, but it is one that has definitely taken a bit of a hit. My number 7 is another one that kind of didn't necessarily have a rating change so much as just not pulling it off the shelf as much, although it is fairly common for this particular designer for me, which is Kokopelli. Kokopelli by Stefan Feld. Stefan Feld is a designer who I like all of his games, like literally all of his games, which has had the weird and interesting side effect. Because I like all of his games, I also end up only keeping the best of the best for me, and Kokopelli just didn't fall into that realm as far as being the best of the best. In Kokopelli, what you're doing is you're going to be having these various clans or factions or whatever they are, these various cars. You're building out these cars and you're trying to combine them into sets so you can activate their abilities. And the system works very well, especially with the variability of the cards, because you don't have all cards in every single game, and so the mix-up of these different shrines and how you're going to combine them and gather this and then activate this and do that as you mess with other players plays well at 2 players, plays well at 3 and 4. I really enjoyed it. I think for me, part of what did pull away from it compared to other Stefan Feld games, again, still like it, still really think it's a solid game, but ultimately it didn't compare with Bora Bora, with Bruges, with Castle Burgundy, Oracle of Delphi, some of my other more favorite Stefan Feld games in my collection. And I think a part of that is just the graphic design in general did a hard time pulling you in. The overall system is one of those games where it doesn't call to you, it doesn't pull you off the shelf, even though every time I play it, I think, wow, this is a lot of fun as I manage all the cards and try to use them against my opponents as efficiently as possible. Solid game, Kokopelli. My number 7, I think we're up to 7 if not mistaken, is going to be Lizard Wizard. Lizard Wizard from Forbidden Games is a game that I thoroughly enjoy. I thoroughly enjoy Lizard Wizard. The main problem I have with Lizard Wizard is that it is too long for the experience I get out of it. To me, Lizard Wizard is a 90-minute game, but it's a 90-minute game that ends up taking about 2.5 hours every single time I play it, which is just a deal breaker as far as the game experience goes, at least for myself. See, Lizard Wizard is a game of, well, managing market economies and bidding and trying to figure out how to get the various cards you need as you go for towers and wizards and familiars and dungeon diving and go for all these cards in different ways that will contribute to your engine. There are ways to house rule the game so it's shorter, but I've never been the biggest fan of house ruling, especially in competitive games as opposed to cooperative experiences. And so Lizard Wizard, I still have Raccoon Tycoon. I still want to play Raccoon Tycoon. I've never played Raccoon Tycoon, which is the game Lizard Wizard is slightly based off of, but tried to be a bit more, a bit heavier as far as the game goes. I think Lizard Wizard is fantastic. I just don't think I want to play 2.5 hours of Lizard Wizard in a single setting, which is why ultimately this one did go away from me. Again, rating I don't know if the rating necessarily changed. It's a hard one. Like, this was a 4 to 5, and I'm very hesitant to call it anything less. I'm very hesitant to call it a 3.5 because the gameplay experience is so good. There are some games out there that just give you really good experiences, but in some way, like Merlin's another one, not from 2021, which is not why it's not on this list, but another Stefan Feld game, that Merlin's just a hard game to table, but it's so much fun. That struggle is always present, but either way, that's my number 7. At number 6, we have another great game, a game that started as a 4 and a 5, ended as a 4 to 5, but it just went from being a game that I was trying to table a lot to a game that I decided I don't need to own anymore, and that's Maglev Metro. Maglev Metro is a pick up and deliver game, which the fact that I liked it this much is already impressive because I don't love pick up and deliver. It's not my go-to genre, and Maglev Metro is very much pick up and deliver as you manage your routes of trains, as you try to gather passengers, and you move them from location to location along your unique rail system that you're building out across the course of the game. Maglev Metro is very good at what it's doing, and part of the reason why it compelled me so much, even as a pick up and deliver, is many of the passengers that you're gathering are going into your own little tableau. So you're delivering, yes, but you're building up a tableau as you go. You're getting more powerful. Your train stations, your trains can do more in the game. You can back up, you can reverse, you can pick up more passengers, move more distance. You can do more as the game progresses, which is why I liked it so much. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when I was looking at it again and again and again, I realized that this was a game that fell into a specific Euro category of being like, a 2-hour-ish game that works best at 3 players, and there's so many of those, mostly Stefan Feld games, that I already have in my collection. And so Maglev Metro, great game as it was, it kind of just creeped into my top 100 last year. Not this year, but last year, 2021, it was like just at the edge of my top 100, and then across the course of the year, I decided that as good as it was, I no longer needed to own it. My number 5 is one that technically never actually faded. This is one where I definitely blame it on the lack of being able to play it with other players, and that's Merchant's Cove. Merchant's Cove from Oh my gosh, what's the company? The company Merchant's Cove from Final Frontier Games. Merchant's Cove is a asymmetric game of being different merchants in the game as you try to figure out your unique advantage as to how you're going to generate the resources you need to sell to the various travelers. Each player has their own little mini game that they're playing as, their own little mini game as far as what they're trying to do, how their board operates, what they do to build things up, and the players are all trying to figure out how to optimize around their mini game and then around the central board in order to make all these deliveries. I enjoy the game quite a bit. The main critique I had was I don't feel the need to play any individual character more than a time or two, like maybe twice per character. They weren't so deep in the experience that they gave. They were different in the experience, but they were not deep in the experience, which means I like trying the captain, I like trying the blacksmith, I like trying the different factions multiple times, but multiple times being like twice at most, and in the case of like the blacksmith, maybe even only once. I like the discovery sense of Merchant's Cove, and to that end, my goal very much was to play through the entire journey and experience, meaning the journey experience, meaning each of the various factions, because once you count the expansions, there are like 4 of them, and then they have the newest Kickstarter, and they had all that, but it came to the point where I realized that people in my game group were just not playing this game. It wasn't that they disliked it, they just didn't love it, and so it was never requested. If it was put on a list of potential titles, it wasn't picked, and so as much as I enjoyed it and kind of wanted to go through it, my big debate was whether I play it solo at the end of the day. But solo games, I mean, I like solo games, but longer solo games are fighting for my attention more. Playing a half-hour experience, I have a ton of those, and I dive into those regularly. Playing an hour and a half, 2-hour-long solo game, those I am a little bit more selective about what hits the table, just because of limited time and attention, and Merchant's Cove didn't make that cut. By number 4, we have one that also didn't necessarily fade, but I played it enough times, and I think in this genre, I just have too many games that are fighting for my attention, and that's Riftforce. Riftforce from Capstone Games is a lane battling experience as you draft various elemental factions at the beginning of the game, and you try to combine those elemental factions to give you your unique competitive advantage as you play these cards down across opposing lanes, making sure that you are able to constantly activate your cards in a way that pings your opponent to death in the game. That's the goal, is pinging your opponent, of knocking them down, of basically hitting them again and again and again, so that they eventually lose points, because every time you kill an elemental, you gain a point. So they don't lose points, you gain points. But then also, every time you activate when they don't have elementals, you also gain points for empty spots. And so it's a constant battle of making sure you have things present, but making sure you can activate things correctly, and making sure the combination of the abilities you have is more efficient at slowly pinging your opponent to death. That's the core puzzle. As much as I enjoyed it, ultimately it was a simple lane battling experience. And it's not simple, it was a lane battling experience. And lane battling experiences, I have games that I like more than Riftforce. I have Hanamakoji, I have a Battle Line, I have Airland and Sea. There's a bunch of these games that have more of a head-to-head matching of cards against a lane battler in order to be able to actually try to efficiently score. And I like more of them more than I do Riftforce. And Riftforce, just good as it is, it ended up becoming one that I was less likely to pull off the shelf. At number 3, we have a Stan Kodonsky title from Daily Magic Games, and that's Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria. Shadow Kingdoms of Valeria is a dice placement game. Dice placement is a mechanic I like in general, and Stan Kodonsky is a designer who I love in general, and Shadow Kingdoms for me is a game that I thoroughly enjoy, but not necessarily as much as some other games in my collection, hence why this one also ended up leaving eventually. Now, I like it. I do. When I first got it, I played it, and I even played it solo as well. I played it a lot when I got it. I played the prototype. I played it solo. All good things across the board. But then eventually, it just left because of the fact that it was very good, but I didn't feel that the experience was as... It's hard to say, because I'm instinctively saying it wasn't necessarily as variable, but I think it was as variable. I think it did give you a different experience every time. It did have different cards coming out and different strategies to pursue, and there was an element of... There was definitely differences to the experience. For something about it, I don't know what it is. I don't have a firm answer. Something about it made it a game that I was less likely to pull out and play, as much as I did overall enjoy the experience. I still think well of the game. It went from a game that I was like, this is great, this is awesome, to a game that I didn't pull off the shelf, and eventually, as a result, it left. Number 2, we have one that is a 2-player experience that takes around, 90 minutes or so, and that's just a hard one for me to commit to. So as much as I like Trickshot didn't stick around. Trickshot is from Wolf Designer Games. It's a 2-player hockey game, and it's a sports game, sure, but ultimately the whole game is about push your luck and managing your action selections in the game. You see, in the game, you're going to be facing off against the ice. You're going to have your little miniatures. There's a pre-painted option for it, and you're taking actions to pass the puck, to shoot, to move, and you're trying to balance out. You can't take the same action twice in a row, which means you're constantly trying to balance what actions to take, who to pass to, and every additional action has an additional level of risk. There's a push your luck system where you're rolling more risk dice the more you push your team. And you have opportunities to re-roll when things go wrong, but limited opportunities. You need to refresh your line before the end of the turn, which means the entire game was about taking the right actions and then the push your luck element. It is possibly the best sports game I've played in board games. I'm pretty sure it is. I'd have to think through any exceptions, but I think it is the best sports game I've personally played. But it was still a 2-hour long experience, or 90 minutes to 2-hour long experience for 2 players in a game and a theme I don't care for. It's hockey. It's not my theme in general. Sure, I'm Canadian. I just don't care for sports. And so overall, much as I enjoy it, much as I recommend it, it's one that eventually did leave the collection. And my last spot, we have the second AEG title on this list, which is Whirling Witchcraft. Whirling Witchcraft from AEG is similar to Bullet almost. This is a game of dumping things onto your opponent. The whole game is about, you have your own little cauldron in the game. You're trying to manage your cauldron in the game. You're trying to load it up so that you can selectively apply these cards you're going to be drafting and try to figure out how to empty your cauldron into your opponents. So it kind of has a strong push your luck system. It's a little similar to Quacks of Quedlinburg, but instead of your own cauldron, it's about your opponent's cauldron, and you're trying to manage all that as you try to figure out the efficient cards to draft that will best utilize your resources and dump them into your opponent while your opponent's doing it to their opponent, and around the table you go. I like it a lot. My biggest problem with it was that as a 4-player experience or as a 3-player experience, there were other games I'd rather play, and as a 2-player experience, sorry, I said that wrong. As a 2-player experience, it wasn't going to be played quite as much, and as a 3 or 4-player experience, I found that you were a little victim to the fact that it didn't feel like I was winning, it felt like someone else was losing. It felt like I didn't win because I played well, it felt like someone else lost because their cauldron went boom because they couldn't manage the overflow of somebody else, meaning I felt a little less agency in my ability to win. And so I fell into this weird zone where it wasn't really quite a strategy game and wasn't really quite a party game. It felt like a little bit of both, and combined with the fact that the components and art and graphic design and all that didn't really do it for me, and that is a factor for me in games. I will keep the worst looking game if it really compels me enough, but games that I'm just enough on the fence on, the art, graphic design, and all that can be the factor, can be the influencing edge. I feel if Whirling Witchcraft had a more compelling, well, aesthetic to the entire thing, I think it may have shifted into the keep zone for now, but as it was a game that I did enjoy, but was ready to move on from. And those are our 15 titles. Those are the 15 titles in 2021 that have most faded on me. Most of these I still own. The ones I got rid of Bullet, I got rid of, I still have Cubitos, Destinies, I got rid of Kokopelli, got rid of Lizard Wizard, Maglev Metro, Merchant's Cove, Riftforce, Shadow Kingdoms, Trickshot, and Whirling Witchcraft. I lied, I got rid of 9 of these 15, and the other 6 I apparently kept. I kept Adventure Tactics, After the Empire, Ankh, Chronicles of Drunagor, Cubitos, and Destinies look to be the ones that I actually kept. So, I kept 6 of the 15, so not quite as much as I thought. In any case, I hope you go ahead and check out the other list. Like I said already, there are 5 total 2021 lists. In addition to all the 2022 lists, I did my full top 100 this year. You can check that out. I did it last year too, but this year's more up to date and has 3 people in it, which is for better or for worse. And until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.